Hello, I'm Brigantia Blackbird of Blackbird's Brew. Happy Monday. Before we get started, please allow me to apologize if you are hearing any extraneous and distracting noises. At the time of this recording, I have quite a rain shower going on, and there's not a whole lot I can do about noise cancellation at this time. So thank you for bearing with me. I really appreciate it. Now for the topic of the day, and this will be the introduction to the goddess Modron, who I will personally be working with throughout the entire month of September. And if you haven't had a chance to watch yesterday's video, Introduction to Mabon, I would highly recommend that you do, because I'm finding it increasingly difficult to discuss these deities as separate beings. Well, I mean, they are separate beings, but to discuss them separately is to ignore large aspects of their mythology, because so much is about their relationship and how their relationship in turn affects the land and, of course, the spiritual ramifications of that. So they go very much hand in hand, and I don't think we'll find ourselves with a video in which I'm discussing Mabon without Modron or Modron without Mabon. So now you're aware. Let's begin with some of the basic information. Modron is a Celtic, specifically a Welsh goddess, and she's considered to be the Great Mother Goddess. And in fact, the name Modron has words in the root and the word Matrona, which translates as Great Mother. Now, it is possible that both Modron and Mabon are titles rather than the personal names of either deity. Now, here's where we begin getting a kind of the curly-cued rat's nest. Kitty got into the yarn and now everything's all tangled together. So please just bear with me with this. When we come to the myths, it's impossible not to notice that there are some similarities between the tale of Modron and Mabon and the tale of Rhiannon and her son Pryderi. Because of these similarities, there are some people out there who consider to be Rhiannon a guise of the goddess Modron, and for Pryderi to be a manifestation of Mabon. But there are other correlations between Modron and Rhiannon. Certainly there are ties to dogs, to horses, birds, the Fae, as well as possibly links with Avalon, possibly even being the Lady of the Lake herself. And to make things even more complicated, Modron is sometimes linked to the Morrigan, and aspects of the Morrigan have been speculated to correlate with the goddess Rhiannon as well. So both the Morrigan and Modron have mythology describing them as the washer at the ford. Other links between them would include dogs, horses, and birds, as well as the Fae, to a certain extent in the Morrigan's case. Now, the Morrigan's ties to the idea of Avalon and everything that entails are a bit more tenuous, and it is an open question of whether or not Morgan Le Fay is a guise of the Morrigan or not. I've been listening to some videos and reading some books by devotees of the Morrigan, and there's a lot of split opinion. No one is really 100% take it to court kind of certain. So, as we are exploring the goddess Modron, I personally find myself asking more questions than I am acquiring answers. I'm looking at the interwoven mythologies, the correspondences, and the roles in myth, and I just find myself wondering, who is she really? Am I seeing goddesses with whom she has other things in common? Am I seeing goddesses that she just has different names or titles that she uses depending upon the context in which she's interacting with human beings? Or is this essentially different names that the goddess has been known by depending upon the location of where she was at, her particular relationship with the people around her, or what time period she happened to be in? A lot of questions, really coming up short on definitive answers. So let's look a little bit closer at myth, and we're going to be going into this a lot more throughout the course of the month, so this is much more of a bare bones approach, just to give us kind of the general bullet points of what we're dealing with here. The first role in the myth that we have for Modron is as the mother of a stolen child who is later restored to her. And you see this idea throughout a lot of mythologies in which a child is taken from the mother either by force or because the child chose to leave. And then this has a detrimental effect upon the land. You know, crops fail, issues between people are difficult, there's other difficulties arising, and it's only upon the return of the child that balance has been restored and the mother's magical energies are poured forth into the land to good effect once more. The second role is this idea of the washerwoman at the ford. This is something that she has strongly in common with the goddess Morgan. Now, in Modron's case, in her story, she was cursed to wash at this particular ford, which was called a Ford of the Barking Dogs, until she conceived a son by a Christian man. So this indicates that at least at the time that this myth was written down, Christianity had already made inroads into the area. Now, she does achieve this conception through Urin Reged. He was a king of Britain, and a year after their encounter, he comes back and she presents him with a son named Owen and a daughter named Morfydd. And for people more familiar with Celtic pronunciations, my profound apologies. I'm doing the best I can. Please correct me. But moving along, in this particular tale, Modron is considered to be a daughter of Aflac, who was a king of Anwen. And Anwen was something that was considered to be the Celtic underworld. But the name Anwen also means a place of apples. And Avalon literally means island of apples. Now, the link between Anwen and Avalon itself, it does take kind of a twisty-turny journey. We go through a lot of different legends, further renditions about the stories of King Arthur, until we eventually get this link. So that's one of these things that are they the same, or is this referring to something that's slightly different? Is this a kind of a different take on the idea? The truth is, I don't know. And considering the sources I've consulted up to this point, I'm not convinced that anyone does for sure either. This leaves us with a lot of food for thought. We have an identity crisis going on here, and that's one of the things that makes getting to know our gods so very difficult, because this isn't just an issue that comes up with Modron or the Morrigan or Goddess Rhiannon. This is something that crops up over and over again. And as I mentioned earlier, this has just been a very brief, bare-bones description of why pinning this particular goddess down is just not a straightforward proposition, and we do not have clear-cut answers in the mythos. And this is very frustrating, because when we worship these gods, when we appeal for their help, when we pray to them, when we ask for their assistance in our rituals or in our spells, it is desirable to have a proper understanding and an accurate understanding about exactly who we are addressing and how that being prefers to be addressed, and just their preferences in general. What are they wanting from us? It's difficult to be pleasing if you're not sure what would be pleasing. So we are left with a mystery to explore, and I realize there's a great temptation to just leave the whole tangled mess alone, not think about it deeply, and just deal with these various goddesses on a more surface, superficial kind of level. A lot of people do that, and I can't judge them too harshly, just because this is exactly the sort of thing that can put your brain into a severe headache. However, when we abandon the pursuit of this possible knowledge and possibly gain understanding, it is actually preventing us from gaining further spiritual insights and from understanding connections and from being able to have an informed and educated opinion one way or the other. And that's the thing that I would like to bring to everyone's attention. And researching this particular video, I was watching the videos of various devotees of these goddesses. There is a difference in opinion. And I myself have been working with the goddess Rhiannon for a few years, and I occasionally wondered if perhaps I was also dealing with the Morrigan, and that the Morrigan was just having a good giggle at my expense, saying, "Ha-ha, you thought you weren't going to work with me. Taught you, girly, didn't I?" It's a distinct possibility that she has been messing with me through a form that I found easier to relate to and was more comfortable working with. So I am not wholly sure within my own mind if I am dealing with the same person or different people or just what the situation is. But I can't grow if I don't try to at least tackle these difficult things to understand. And no one else. I mean, we're going to be constantly challenged. We're going to be pushed outside of our comfort zones when it comes to building relationships with the gods. And sometimes they're not going to give us, just yes or no answers in either direction about anything, because that would defeat the purpose. And the part of the purpose, I suspect, is for us to try to discover things for ourselves and to really gain a little bit of confidence from the process of doing so. We have these faculties, we can use them, and there's a lot of satisfaction that can be derived from actually applying our abilities as opposed to just being spoon-fed answers. So, is Modron Rhiannon? Is Modron the Morrigan? Are all three of them one and the same? I've got a bee in my bonnet, and I have a deep-rooted personal need to find out. I want to know who it is I've been talking to. But beyond that, there is still yet another reason, and I can't clearly define or articulate what that reason is at the moment, but the answer to this question really matters to me. I want to know. I feel like this is important for my own personal journey. For those watching this video, that may not be the case for you, but it is something for me, so you'll be able to watch my process as I go through this month of trying to find out, or at least have stronger suspicions one way or another. I do find myself leaning in one direction, but I haven't satisfied my own mind and my own thought process just yet. So that's what I'm going to be doing through September. And we'll see whether or not I can form a conclusion. Now, even if I do come to a conclusion about this, please, if you're watching, do not feel any pressure whatsoever to adopt my conclusion as your own. If this question also matters to you, you are going to have to go through that process, and you're going to have to figure it out for yourself. Don't take anyone's certainty as absolute proof, and don't let their reasons become your reasons. When you're talking about something as intimate and as personal as a connection with the deity, it should always be about what you can be sure of within your own mind, heart, and soul. So, that's what we're going to be doing, because I'm not content to leave well enough alone. Now, the last thing to really give consideration about Modron's is really her role as grieving mother during the harvest. This is something that's just really popped in my head quite strongly. Grief is a step before the process of letting go of something that has been lost. So I find myself asking, what have I been letting go of during the season and really throughout the whole year? There's several different things, and I hope to address some of that in a coming video, because I wonder if some other people might have been going through a similar grieving process that I have about certain things. But you could also, if you're interested, you could certainly share with me things that you've been letting go of during the season that are relevant to you. And then we come to the idea of loss requiring adaptation. If we have lost something, if we've acknowledged it, and things cannot go back to what they were before, that means things cannot be and operate the same way. So adaptation allows for new growth. In what way have any of us noticed ourselves growing after suffering a profound loss? That's a pretty interesting question. We never really want or seek out this kind of growth, but it is something that makes loss perhaps a little bit more bearable. And it opens doors, perhaps doors that we didn't want to open, perhaps learning lessons we would have preferred not to, but it is what it is. We are where we are, and we might as well make the most of our circumstances, whatever those hope to be. And the third point about dealing with Modron and her being the grieving mother during the harvest season is the idea of hope of goodness. Modron had the hope of having her son restored, and he eventually was, and of course in the mythos this is part of the yearly pattern. He's taken away, and then he is brought triumphantly back. Hope is very important. I think it genuinely keeps people alive, and great changes are built upon the foundation of hope. If you do not have hope that something could be different or improved or better, then you're just treading water. How long can you keep treading water? Because eventually you're going to be running out of fuel. So hope is also the fuel that allows us to keep moving forward, rather than an energy that eventually runs out because we're just trying to stay in the same place. So the question becomes, what do we hope for? What am I hoping for? What are you hoping for? I think there's a lot of discussions that we could potentially have about that. So I would invite you to come to the Blackbird's Brew, where we could have some of these conversations and have a little bit of an intellectual interchange about all of this and that. What are your own thoughts? Is Modron a goddess that you have looked into in the past? Have you had personal dealings with her? Where do you weigh in on the whole thing? Is she an individual that we simply perhaps don't know the personal name to? Is she the Morrigan? Is she the Rhiannon? Are they all the same? Are they different? Are these different names for different time periods? What do you think about all that? And really, what is Modron's experiences in the mythos? What is that teaching you about this particular time of year? How is it affecting you? And just how are you feeling about things in general? So there'll be a link in the description box below. And before I go, I would like to have a special shout out to one of the members of Blackbird's Brew, Magpie. When I was doing the research for this video, my brain was just going in 10,000 different directions. And our conversation really helped me kind of sort out this whole issue of who is Modron exactly. So I really appreciate you, Magpie. I hope we have many more conversations like that in the future. And I think that's it for now. I'll see everyone in another video. Bye.